this. It is my honor to introduce to you, if you don't already know, the newly retired but always Reverend Greg Wood from the Presbyterian Community Church. Fabulous guy. He's going to be talking about the beautiful exchange, right? It's about helping others can change us, how that can happen. So if you would give a warm welcome, whether you clap, whistle, I don't care, Greg Wood.
So from time to time in my life, I have gone out and done guest speaking, preaching at different places. And the thing that I always worried about the most was, would my wife sit in somebody else's spot? and often she would. I got to tell you, for the last 40 plus years, I have been paid to be good. I mean, I have. I have been paid to be good, and it's really hard being good for nothing. So, please bear with me. So in 1990, when I was a newly minted, ordained Presbyterian minister, my wife and I went to a wedding rehearsal dinner. And we lived in a little town called La Plata, and we drove all the way to Kirksville. And I know some people in the room knows where Kirksville is and La Plata, Missouri is, and I'm sorry that they do. But we went to a rehearsal dinner, and on our way back, it was raining. It was 9 o'clock or so, and there was a woman walking on the side of the road, and she was walking with purpose. And so we pulled over and we said, "Hey, can we give you a ride?" And so she got in the car and we said, "Where are you going and what's going on?" And she explained that her boyfriend, who lived in a town 40 miles to the west of where we were, had gotten picked up and taken to the hospital, and she was on her way to Columbia, Missouri, which was about another 60 miles away from where we were, and that she was trying to get there because she was worried about him. And so Norm and I, we said, well, let's go to the house and maybe we can help you out in some way. And so we went to our little manse, and Norm and I talked, and we said, well, why don't you take our second car and drive down to Columbia, and when you come back, you can stop and give us our car back, and we'll take you on home. And this is rural Missouri, and so, we don't even lock our house at this point. And she said, well, I would do that, except I can't drive a stick shift. People, teach your grandkids how to drive a stick shift car. So I ended up driving her from where we were down to Columbia to drop her off at the hospital. And along the way, she said to me, so you guys must be Christians. And I said, yeah, okay. And she said, so what are you? Are you Baptist or Assemblies of God? And she said, and I said, no, we're Presbyterians. And she said, we have those in my town, but they don't help people. And that hit me pretty hard. It still does when I think about it. And not because Presbyterians are anything special, but because that's not what we're supposed to do. That's not who we're supposed to be. And that was a profound truth from an unlikely prophet. It's really, especially in the last few years, has become increasingly unpopular to help people. You know that. I know that you got some ugly words from town last year when you allowed the emergency cold weather shelter to be here. I know that. I mean, and you know that, and you know that it was an inconvenience and it wasn't exactly what you wanted, but it was still unnecessary. And I'm profoundly and deeply thankful for you taking that risk to do that. Excuse me. So I know that you as a group of people, and just looking out here and seeing all the other places and ways that you're involved, I know that you are deeply involved in the pains and hurts of the Florence area, and it is a wonderful thing. In 2016, I'm just giving you all my history here, all the history that I know. In 2016, in the spring, the head of the emergency cold weather shelter walked into my office at the Presbyterian church here with this big box, paperboard box, and he set it down and he said, "That's the stuff from the cold weather shelter, and you can do with it whatever you want. If you want to close the cold weather shelter or run it, you can do that. Here's everything we know about it." And then he handed me a key to the locker. I hadn't volunteered for this. So we called a meeting of the Emergency Cold Weather Shelter Board, and we all talked, and the general consensus was that after 2 years of running the cold weather shelter and only being open 3 nights, that we probably ought to let it close and just let it die and go away. But there was $8,000 in the bank, and with that money, somebody suggested that we ought to see what happens this year. And so during that winter of 2016, 2017, we were open 12 nights and averaged about 16 or 17 people per night. Not a big difference in Florence, but one of my biggest learnings from that week working with the emergency cold weather shelter was that we weren't helping people. We weren't. We were not helping people. Instead, we were helping Steve, and we were helping Brian, and we were helping James, and we were helping Jennifer and Haley. It's not people. It's individuals. It's well, they are people. But it's not that blanket state. We're not helping them. We're helping friends and family and people that just need a little help for a little bit of time. And it's more than just semantics. First Step, I hope you know what First Step is. First Step is a transitional housing program for families that's been around now since incorporated in 2017 at the end of the year. Anyway, out of that emergency cold weather shelter group, some folks got together and said, we need to do something that's more than just keep people warm for a couple nights and then send them back out into the cold. And the group met. Now, one thing you need to know about Presbyterians, we love committees. We love them deeply. There's a saying about if you want to go fast, go by yourself, and if you want to go far, go with a group.
Yeah.
I would change that to say, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to take an extra year to talk something to death, go with a Presbyterian. But out of that came this notion that maybe we could have a hostel, because city code said there can't be a mission in Florence, meaning an overnight place to stay or a place where people come and live and stay. And so we came up with this great idea. we would have a hostel, and during the wintertime, folks could stay there and live there. And then in the spring and summer, when the bicycle riders start coming through town, we could throw all these friends and family that we've gotten to know out into the street again, and bicyclists could stay in the hostel, and we could pay for the whole year by doing this. And there were some of you all were a part of that, and Pip, I know you were a part of that, and some of the rest of us. And then I think it slowly dawned on us that if we had Stephanie and her 2 children in our hostel over the winter, and then on the 1st of April we threw them out into the cold and into the rain, that maybe the last 3 months of her children's schooling wouldn't amount to much because they didn't have a kitchen table to work on. And so finally the idea was hatched that first step would be a transitional housing program for families. It was maybe something we could get the city to agree with, and thanks to some creative thinking by some of the people in the planning section, we were able to do that. And so instead of having a hostel, we started using trailers. Somebody donated a trailer, and then we purchased trailers, and we would use pretty much anything we could get. And with that attitude, Mama Stephanie and little Sally and Robert, and these are just all made up names, got to get out of their drippy tent in the cold and into a leaky trailer with a cold shower. We were off to the races, and so that was what happened. And I'd love to tell you more, but there's other things I want to say this morning, and I was sternly reminded that 20 to 25 minutes is all I get this morning.
Sternly?
What's that?
Sternly warned?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm such a tender soul that any What I would like to ask you first, and please don't take this the wrong way, but what on earth are you doing for heaven's sake? Now, in my tradition, we want to be good so that we get into heaven. And that's not really true, but that's kind of the perception of things. And I will tell you that I have a term for that. I'm going to be good so that when I die, I can go to the place that's best. You have a word for that too. It's either selfishness or narcissism, right? So we have Presbyterians in my town, but they don't help people. That still rings in my ear. So what on earth are you doing for heaven's sake? And I'm pretty sure that you're not here for the pie in the sky and the by and by. But you get my drift. What are you doing? Why are you here? Are we gathering together to help anyone other than ourselves? It's not either or. It can be both and it usually is both if it's not the one. It's not one or the other. It's either you're here for yourself or you're here for self and others. They go together. The two ideas go pretty well together. And well, I did write down here after saying that, what are you doing for heaven's sake? I wrote down, give me a moment before you light the fires and heat up the tar and get out the feathers. I'm not really worried about that because Sally's here and she will protect me. When we look around at life, we are pretty lucky to live here. We really are pretty lucky to live here. I know that you've worked hard to get here. All of us have worked hard in our lives to get where we are. But you know that everywhere you look, there are people that have worked as hard or harder than we have. And they haven't the same benefit that we've received. I mean, it's true worldwide. It's also true right here. There are people that have nothing that have worked harder in their life than I have. And that's hardly fair. You can almost hear some of them singing, can't you? You load 16 tons, and what do you get? One day older and deeper in bed. Right?
Yeah.
What is our responsibility to those other people? Not because we're religious or have faith or are good people. What is our responsibility to them? We have some responsibility because this is our community. Community is a wonderful word. You know, it can mean two things. It can be a geographic area. We live in a wonderful community. I love that my community has a sandy beach. Whew. You know, praise God from whom all blessings flow. But community is also something that we acknowledge when we see other people. That is built not by expanding the city limit signs, but is expanded by inviting people in and seeing that their needs are somehow acknowledged at the least and helped at the best. It's way more than a geographic arrangement. And my challenge to you and to me is to acknowledge the community and then to build our community. And it can be as simple as learning somebody's name. We went to a youth conference, and we needed somebody to go along as an adult leader. And so Ann went along. Ann was director of the preschool and was very involved in everything, but didn't really acknowledge much other than her own stuff. And we invited the speaker to come to talk with our youth group, the speaker for the week. And this was something at Montreat, North Carolina, which is the second most beautiful place in the world. And he came and we introduced everybody, and we had a group of about 35 people. And after the end of the week, I was talking with Ann, and Ann said, "This was a really special time for me. It was it perhaps even life-changing." Okay, why? And she said, "Well, because at the closing service, we all went up for communion, and the speaker called me by name." When you know someone's name, and when someone calls you by name, something happens to us. You are recognized when someone remembers your name. When someone calls you by name, you are a person. You're not one of them. You're not this, you're not that. You are you. And that is life-changing in so many ways. It is life-changing because you have been recognized by someone else. When we talk about them, you know, those people, those worthless homeless people out there. I haven't met all the homeless people in Florence, but I haven't met any that are worthless.
No.
There may be some, but I haven't met them yet. And when they're them, they're only two-dimensional. And people fill out and become three-dimensional when we call them by name, just as we become three-dimensional. There's power in knowing someone else's name, but there's also responsibility. There's that acknowledgement that they are a human being and that they share the same space as we do. I have to admit here that Sally took my little simple thing and made it a really great name and title. And I'm intimidated by all of you because you have had and you have really, really, really amazing people come and talk and share, and there's doctors and there are people that have written books and so I was a little intimidated because pretty much my whole message and my whole hope for what I can do is to get us to recognize other people.
A big deal.
There's a guy that is at the south end of Fred Meyer parking lot every Sunday morning.
Oh, yeah.
So for about the last, 10 and a half years that I've been here, he hasn't been there the whole time. The last 2 or 3 years, he's been there. I don't really remember. And on Sunday morning, on my way to church, I would go through the Fred Meyer parking lot, and I would give him $2. Now, I would admit that I went to Fred Meyer's on Sunday morning to get a donut, but I don't want my wife to know that. So there is that guy there, and he's there with his dog and his cardboard sign. His name's John. And John would come down to the church sometimes and recharge his devices, his phone and his devices. He would sit there and I'd go out and talk to him. And sometimes I'd see him other places in town and I'd say, "Hi, John," and sometimes he would acknowledge that and sometimes he wouldn't. And that's okay. And sometimes I would see him at McDonald's, and sometimes I would see him other places. He's living the way that he wants to live. I've known him for more than 6 years. He came to the cold weather shelter a few times. I would see him at other times. He has slept at the Presbyterian church outside because it's got a dry place to live. I don't know much about his life, but I don't have to. I don't have to judge him. He's part of my community. He's part of my family. And so when people start talking smack about those worthless homeless people, I can't stand for that. There may be worthless homeless people. But all I know is that when you start down that trail, you're talking about my friend John. and you're not going to talk about my friends that way.